Times they are changing over there at Sony, and a lot of the bosses and a lot of the recent bosses have had some things to say. And we'll start off with Shuhei Yoshida, the 31-year-long president over there for PlayStation, departed in the middle of January. And well, he was an absolute staple for a company that, seen itself trying to break into the video game industry by partnering with Nintendo, only to be spurned by them and create its biggest competitor. And the ebbs and flows that have happened under Yoshida's reign, it's not likely something that we're ever going to see duplicated, so gotta give the man his due. Shuhei Yoshida, a beloved PlayStation figurehead, has now concluded his time with the company. After a run of 31 years, he's been a part of Sony's video game brand since its very inception, climbing the ladder to become one of the most important and recognizable people in the business. He announced that he would be leaving PlayStation back in November, but won't be retiring completely, saying he wants to stay in the industry. His public resignation spawned a massive outpouring of love and appreciation, with many praising his sincere passion for games and optimistic, cheerful nature. And yeah, he was always the guy, like during the halcyon days of E3, like he'd pop up on stage and he'd just be this kindly older Japanese gentleman come up on stage and go, "Oh, we're very happy with what we're doing right here. A lot of fun stuff on the horizon." Everybody be like, "Oh, he's so nice." And it's a shame you guys can't put anything out in a timely manner. And at least he got to go out on somewhat of a high by putting out Astrobot, or at least being, responsible some of that game's success. But he's going to be staying in the industry in so much as, advising them of things that his company should have been doing to begin with, so they wouldn't be in this conundrum that they find themselves at this point. But former PlayStation president Shuhei Yoshida says he would have tried to resist Sony's push for live service games. Maybe that's one of the reasons they removed me from the first party. Oh, okay. So maybe this whole, my public resignation, I'm just really happy about what we did, and, I'm really excited about what's in the future. But, yeah, maybe he was trying to steer the company out of this death spiral. But a bunch of hubristic assholes thought that they knew better than the guy that's been there since day one. Asked for his opinion on his former employer's current development direction, former PlayStation president Shuhei Yoshida says that if he were still in charge of the gaming giant, he would have put up much more definitive resistance against Sony's ill-fated obsession with live service titles. Or, yeah, Foam Stars was a Square Enix joint, but Concord, that had nope factors for Japan writ large on it. Helldivers 2, not too sure what the numbers were over there in Japan, but that's not really what they're all about. As Sony being a Japanese first company and their most successful title, critically and commercially in recent years, also came off of the Eastern Shores, I'd imagine he would have been more focused on that. As anyone who has caught even the faintest whisper of the video game discourse in recent years can attest, Sony's track record with this concept of constantly updating massively multiplayer games has been far, far less than impressive. In 2022, the company announced their intention to launch a total of 12 live service games by the end of the fiscal year 2025. Oopsie daisy. However, this outlook would later be cut down to just 6, with related entries in The Last of Us, that one's been scrapped, Marvel's Spider-Man, don't know anything about that, and Twisted Metal franchises. Interesting. Being among the handful that were given the proverbial axe. Okay, yeah, those are all gone. Fast forward to the start of the year, and not only have 2 of these 6 games, the hero shooter Concord and Splatoon at Home Foam Stars, already been shut down, but Sony has already canceled another pair of in-development live service titles, including one centered around the God of War universe. Yeah, we talked about that recently as well. Now, given the overall slapstick nature of the company's attempts to capitalize on the live service model, it comes as a little surprise that Kinda Funny Games host Greg Miller, barely funny, oh my god, stumping for Kamala Harris funny, Greg Miller, would use a recent opportunity to speak with Yoshida to press him on his thoughts on PlayStation's less than stellar approach to their desired goals. I'd imagine that barely tolerable, they were probably huge cheerleaders for Concord, those fucking shills. Hosting the original PS1 dev team members on January 15th for his first interview since officially retiring from the company in November of 2024. Now, Miller would at one point raise the topic of Sony's aforementioned all-in bet on the live service games to inquire to Yoshida, with your eyes on the entire industry, did that make sense to you? In turn, the former PlayStation boss asserted, for me, I was managing this budget, so I was responsible for allocating money to what kinds of games to make. If the company was considering going that way, it would have made sense to stop making either God of War or a single-player game and put all the money into live service games. Well, yeah, exactly, because if one hits, it's a gold mine, but in general, like, this is the definitive developer lottery that we're playing right here. Yeah, focus in on what you guys are good at. Another God of War game, yeah, there's a lot of stories to tell there. A good single-player game, I mean, Astrobot continues to have fantastic word of mouth. I don't know what you're doing. Jesus Christ, that was a character? Why didn't I see that one before? But in offering the qualification of his observation, he then recalled, however, what they did after I left and Herman Hulst took over the company, that dork. Sony gave us a lot more resources. Interesting. It's almost like the biggest shill for live service games decided to go talk to the higher ups at Sony and going, guys, you see Fortnite? We could do Fortnite. Give us more money. They're like, bet. So I'm sorry, I don't think they told Herman to stop making single-player games. They said, oh yeah, these games are great, just continue doing that, and we'll give you additional resources to work on these live service games and try it. And he's like, all right, cool, we'll just go ahead and kneecap all of our other studios to just go all in on live service. We'll still continue to, make the single-player stuff in the background, don't worry about that, but we'll eventually come back around to it. Further sharing his optimism towards the situation, Yoshida pointed to the success of Helldivers 2 and exclaimed, nobody expected that, but you cannot plan a success in this industry. That's the most fun part of the business. Yeah, exactly, because Helldivers 2, super popular. And then Sony did what Sony does best by meddling into the success of it and has just kind of left it in a much more crippled state. Like, it had a bit of a resurgence towards the end of the year, but at this point in time, bro, it's not great. It's not a great success, at least what it once was, at least what it was at its peak. Shuhei is not the only former Sony boss who is speaking up, because we also have, Shawn Layden, okay, a much more divisive figure. He's talking about development costs and what he would have done with that problem had he still been in the business. Ex-PlayStation boss advocates for shorter games amid rising development costs. Now, we talked about this recently. I forget exactly where I worked it in, but it's a standalone video that may or may not be released at this point in time. But you have people that are out there saying, developers in the industry, really bad ones, which is really terrible ideas. No. The people are just burnt out on those big 30-plus hour games. They just want shorter experiences. It's like, oh no, you guys just want to do less work and get rewarded for subpar performance at the same rate that you were back when, you were actually making games people want to play. Because you take a look at these quote-unquote shorter experiences that people are playing, and they're dumping hundreds of hours into these titles. And for the big games that are out there, like, what are some of people's most memorable games of the last few years? All right, these big sprawling RPGs, your From Software titles. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and Remake, people dumping dozens, hundreds of hours into those titles. But yeah, no, they're all tired of those, and they're more focused on, we can't really point to anything super successful like that. Former PlayStation executive Shawn Layden says the price of game development has reached an unsustainable point, and games should be shorter to remedy this. Now you had me in the first half right there, okay? Yeah, development has reached an unsustainable point. And that's mostly because they're just wasting money. Okay, so many consultants, so many worthless assistant developers, coffee fetchers, and activists that are in the industry, just causing such bloat on teams. Managers for micro groups that are working on background foliage as opposed to just, like an art department where everybody's dedicated to the process. No, you just think that shorter games are going to end up working out well for you. Now, when Sony focused on shorter games before, they did something called the Order 1887. Does anybody remember that? 4 hours! There you go. How much did that succeed? And on one hand, right, you have Shawn Layden's approach, we just need to have shorter games, but then you have Herman Hulst's approach of, no, live service game where we just dominate people's lives. It's like, there could probably be the happy medium right here, because gaming used to be like this really niche hobby that was super successful, but no, greed conquers all. In a recent discussion that's rippled through the gaming community, Shawn Layden, the former boss of PlayStation, on the American side of things, right, Shuhei was over there in Japan, emphasized the need for a strategic pivot in the game development cycle to address the ballooning costs associated with AAA titles. Layden's insight comes at a time when the video game industry faces significant challenges due to escalating budgets that threaten its long-term sustainability. Layden, who also had a storied career at Sony, served in various high-profile roles, including CEO of Entertainment America, highlighted the current development costs for AAA have reached the triple-digit millions. Yeah, 9 digits. 9 digits. The financial strain is not only making the industry unsustainable, but is also stifling creativity. I don't disagree, because these games have become too big not to fail, but to succeed. They just keep on doing the most boilerplate, boring gameplay choices that nobody's excited to come back to. There's no reason that they shouldn't be playing something else that they already have in their back catalog when things just look so uninspired and uncreative. Pressure to justify these enormous budgets often leads developers towards safer, sequel-driven projects rather than innovative new IP titles, according to Layden. Yeah, so far, so good. One of Layden's key suggestions for alleviating these issues is to return to shorter game lengths. What? He argues that games can be developed within 3 years and offer experiences around 15 hours long. Wait, what? Like, okay, I also agree with you. Okay, ballooning costs and then also just protracted development cycles. That's a big problem in the industry. Wow, he works for 10-cent games. I didn't actually know that. That's hilarious. But as opposed to the current trend of sprawling multi-year projects that promise 50 to 60 hours of gameplay. Yeah, instead of giving something that, people will remember, you just want to continue to flood their consciousness with just content. How well is that working out for streaming services that just continue to pump out shit that people put on in the background? Nothing that's, ever going to leave a lasting mark. Something that'll just simply fill up time for people. The streaming bubble burst, and this tactic isn't working at all, but okay. This approach, Layden posits, could not only keep costs in check, but also deliver more tightly knit, compelling content that respects players' time constraints, especially as the average gamer's age skews older. Yeah, as opposed to, compelling stories that people actually want to go back and engage with, that they can engage with in bite-sized portions. Like, I was playing Final Fantasy, you guys know this at this point in time, I was playing Rebirth for, all of 2024, from the time that it released all the way through and up until now. I've moved over to the PC port. I think the longest I've ever sat down and played the game for, at least recently, I'm sure that there were a couple of hours, in the first few, days and weeks when the game first came out there, where I was, clocking a little bit longer than that, but about 2-3 hours might be pushing it. But yeah, anywhere between like an hour or 2 hours, that's about all I can really stand playing a game. Okay, outside of that, I just feel useless if I have that much time on my hands. There's like something else I could be doing. But that's a game that if you do everything in just a normal mode playthrough, that'll give you 100 hours. Okay, if you want to do the hard mode on top of that, I just buzzed through the hard mode playthrough on PS5, and that was an additional 50 hours worth of content right there, and it was all fun. And it wasn't like I was walled by anything. Like the second go round, like things were, moving a lot swifter and a lot easier, because I had the muscle memory and I knew the mechanics that's there. It's like, and I was still even closer to the end of the game as you're going through that final boss gauntlet. I was learning new mechanics to the game. Like, it's the problem with these games is not that they're too long, it's just they're boring and bloated, and that word of mouth around them fucking sucks. So you can try to blame anything that you want for the problem of the industry, but if you're not focusing on just the superfluous number of jobs that's out there, you're already missing the point. Look at the most popular games that are out there right now. Big, sprawling, From Software RPGs. I don't like them, but you cannot deny how popular they are. People dump hundreds of hours into Dark Souls, Elden Ring, and games of that ilk all the time. Look at the most successful games. Okay, your free-to-play games that are out there, your live service games, hundreds, thousands of hours that have been dedicated to those games. You're trying to tell me that shorter experiences is the way to curtail budgets in today's day and age? No, it's about making impressionable games that have a lasting impact, that call to the gamer to come back and play. The fact that we're dealing with people just not being able to see the forest through the trees, that's why the industry is in the state that it's in. That's why I think that Hollywood is more likely to turn things around quicker and more effectively than gaming can, because even though these are people that used to be in high levels that could have turned this stuff around, they didn't, and the people that have taken their spot, are even dumber than they come across. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.